Okay, I mean, this is a great question. How to scale up resources. I mean, I looked at some IFPRI documents, and they gave the estimated, or maybe you could, the estimated incremental investment to be $3.8 to $4.8 billion. Now, I have been in development for a long time. I won't tell you how long. You would know how old I am, but it has been a long time. What has been the real problem, and that's what we saw when we worked on that book, when we looked at success in agricultural transformation, the bottleneck, countries that have been able to scale up, to transform their entire agriculture and therefore their entire economy, have been governments who wanted to do it. That's why I call this the political economy challenge of Africa. It's the political economy challenge that has to be overcome. I mean, decision makers must believe it is in their interest to invest in agriculture. We have heard about the importance of investing, and it's absolutely true. So I'm not going to tell you anything different now. So let me just go back a little bit and say where we come from. I mean, Bruce Gardner and I, when I retired from the bank, I decided that I need to look into why. I mean, if there's a World Bank people here, maybe they'll kill me, but why is it that our efforts, World Bank efforts in agriculture, has been so meager for the efforts we put in? And everybody thinks they have the money, they've got the expertise, they've got everything. So you see, money is not the issue. You can put in money, and we can't even disburse our loans. So money is definitely not the way to look at this problem. The real thing is we need to look at all the political, economy, environment. As you just said, transform politics. That's exactly right. What kind of governments have been able to do that? And that's what I want to go into. Maybe because of the shortness of time.
You have 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Okay, I have a good timekeeper here. We found that countries that succeeded, let's go to the slide, let's go further on. Countries that succeeded, and we looked at Japan, the first country in East Asia to transform its agriculture and industrialize. We looked at England, the first country to have an agricultural and an industrial revolution. We look at the United States, a country who is today a superpower and its agriculture is highly productive. So we found that these governments, although they are separate in time, culture, institutions, everything, they have been able to put in 5 conditions. The first one is macro and political stability. Nobody will argue with that. The second is effective technology transfer. Nobody will argue with that. The third is access to lucrative markets. Nobody will argue with that either. The fourth is an ownership system that incentivizes private people to produce because they will keep what they produce. You need a system in which private people are going to gain from it. Agriculture will not be transformed until it is profitable. If it's not profitable, it will never be transformed. And the fifth is you must have an employment-creating non-farm economy, because as agriculture becomes more productive, labor will leave. When labor leaves, labor has to be absorbed in the growing economy. Now, each of these conditions is non-controversial, but the difficulty is putting the 5 conditions together and maintaining them for decades. So what is required for the transformation of agriculture is a very long-term commitment of not just one government, one budget cycle, one donor, one grant. No, it has to persist over decades. None of these countries have done it, on the cheap, as somebody says. There's no on the cheap transformation of agriculture. So when we say scale up, we need to mobilize a political system that will deliver, not only for one, but continuous. So when you put the question that way, it becomes quite complicated, because then you go into value systems, go into what people want out of their economies. So this question is not a technical question at all. It's really a fundamental question on what you want your society to be. So although we start from agriculture, we find to make it happen, you have to change it. It has to be transformation. It can't be just yield increases either, because that doesn't last either. It has agriculture, unless it's profitable, will not be transformed, period. There's no other way. Socialist agriculture did not work. They had big farms, they had tractors, they had all the trappings of, quote, efficient farming, but they didn't have the incentives there to do it. People didn't want to do it. Why should they bother? 9 to 5, whether my pigs die or not, I'm going home. So that is the basic message. The scaling up, we should not be worried so much about, are we going to get the financial resources? As Schultz says, it's not a matter of financial resources. For a long time, this profession has been concerned about the financing gap and this gap and that gap. That is really a waste of time. That's not the issue. The issue is often we do not have the political system, we do not have the governments, we do not have the societies that are willing to invest long-term and transform agriculture so that everybody benefits, not just the rich, not a dualistic agriculture, but everybody, smallholders and so on. So it's not a secret that countries that have been able to have radical land reform, like Taiwan, like Japan, like South Korea, and more recently China, have been able to transform their agriculture. In fact, China is a very good example. They equalized it, but they didn't give people incentives. So for 30 years, it just sat there, nothing doing. So when they changed the incentive with the responsibility system, the whole system just exploded. They had everything. They had the infrastructure, they had the stability, but they had no incentives. So putting together these 5 conditions is absolutely critical to transform your agriculture. And you should not be so concerned about, do we have enough money? Do you want this to happen? If the political system wants this to happen, it will happen. If it doesn't, it won't. I hope I haven't been too pessimistic.